Welcome back to Kamen Rider Battride Genesis. You voted, and the answer is Kamen Rider Double will be my next unlock. So Kamen Rider Double actually focuses on two people for a change who comprise one rider. On the one half, you have the idiot savant genius, Philip, who typically uses the cyclone memory that you saw there, and Shotaro, the hard-boiled, or perhaps half-boiled, detective who does all the legwork, who comprises the left half, typically Joker, the black side there that you see. The series takes place in the fictitious town of Futo, where quite often trouble is afoot, and usually this trouble takes the form of cats stuck up the trees and masked men coming out of the darkness to attack me. This is actually among my favorite Kamen Rider series, because it really was one of the landmark series that changed the format of all of Kamen Rider moving forwards. It added a certain humor to it that hadn't really been present up until that point, with a couple of notable exceptions like Den-O, and to a lesser extent Kabuto. But I digress. The main focus of the story is on these two guys. Shotaro tends to go do all the legwork. He's a detective. He fancies himself a hard-boiled, pro-truth, anti-police, kind of do-anything to get to the truth kind of detective, when in reality he's a bit of a softie and kind of has to make ends meet by doing things like finding lost balloons and lost cats and whatnot. But when real trouble comes to pass, such as, yep, all these masked guys here. These are poor examples, but the primary enemy of Kamen Rider Double are called Dopant. They use, as you may have guessed, USB sticks, as does Double, to call upon their powers. There's a lot to say about Kamen Rider Double, so I'm just going to break it down real quick and say that where Shotaro is the detective and runs out and does all the legwork, Philip is the brains of the operation. Now, Philip is special. He has a direct connection to what some translations call the planetary bookshelf. Essentially, within his head, he holds the entirety of all knowledge. He knows absolutely everything about everyone and literally everything. The problem is he cannot recall it at will. He needs to literally Google search his brain. He needs to narrow down everything that's in his head with keywords. That's where Shotaro comes in. He goes out and does the legwork. He does the interviews. He does stakeouts. He figures out the details of the case, and then takes it to Philip, and Philip will use keywords from his searches to narrow down the culprit, at which point Shotaro will confront the culprit, and they will more often than not have to transform into Double to face them, such as the taboo Dopant that I'm kicking the crap out of right now. I've done a poor job showcasing Double's abilities, and I apologize for that. There's just so much to say about Double because it's among my favorite series that I don't even know where to start. It goes without saying I'm going to have to do more than one episode with Double. Now you can see that he's been switching forms. I've mostly been using Cyclone Joker. The left half of his body, determines his fighting style. The right half determines essentially what element he fights with. So black on the left side is Joker, and can also be switched with Trigger, which uses a gun, and Metal, which uses a staff. The right half, Cyclone, uses wind powers, high speed, obvious. There's also Heat, which you can see right there. Fire powers, obviously. And then Luna, which they've described as sort of ghostly or unknown powers. In short, it gives them stretchy powers. So here we go. Double has gotten in over his head, fighting the Taboo Dopant. And I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to save him. Let's see. Not many unlocked right now. I've got Ghost Drive and Mach. Well, I just unlocked Mach, so let's give him a shot.
Kamen Rider Battride.
Yep. And let's pair him up with Drive. Let's do this, fam.
Kamen Rider Battride.
Yes, he does do that every single time. More often than not, people who use the evil version of the Gaia memories are just sort of victims of circumstance. They're the sort of people that get, not to hit too close to a drug analogy, but that's very much what it is. The first taste is free kind of thing. You know, you've got guys who are down on their luck, or guys who wish they could just get back at that one coworker. Just very minor things like that. They get a taste of the kind of power that a Gaia memory gives them, and they just go back for more. But the more they use, the more they abuse. The Gaia memories that Double uses are very safe. They have been modified to be as harmless as possible, but, and this is important, the Kamen Rider Double series very much introduced the concept of the driver, which is to say the belts that everyone uses. Mach here uses the Mach driver. Drive there uses the Drive driver. It was really Kamen Rider Double that sort of focused on the belt as a tool instead of just an addition to the costume. So anybody who used a Gaia memory could become addicted very severely and would eventually become a total slave to its power, unless it passed through a driver first. So the good guys had their own version of their drivers. The bad guys had their own version. But most of the people that ended up being the monster of the week had none. They were just using it directly in their own body. And as such were generally just slaves to it. They may have started out with, you know, not wholesome intentions. Nobody goes looking for the power to destroy a building in the hopes that they're going to do good, you know. These were not nice people to begin with, but a lot of the time they get in over their heads as a result. It's a theme that Double really pioneered in terms of Kamen Rider series, and as I'm talking, he's getting his ass kicked. He's getting his asses kicked. So I better lend him a hand. It's a long way of saying that thematically he is among my favorite riders as a result of the way his story is told, and a lot of questions about things that happen in other Rider series sort of get not necessarily answered because they're not necessarily the same universe, but they get addressed anyway. A couple words on Kamen Rider Mach real quick, seeing as I'm playing as him. He is partner to Drive. In spirit, though not necessarily in job title. He is the brother of Drive's partner, who herself does not have any Kamen Rider powers or anything like that. She's just a simple police officer. And Mach himself started off as, not a police officer at all. He is just a photographer. When the global freeze happened, the Kamen Rider drive system was just a prototype. And it was a successful prototype. It all worked out. The global freeze was more or less averted with, as many casualties as they could avoid, at least. So the Kamen Rider drive system was fully finished and then put into storage, awaiting the return of the Roid Mutes. But at the same time, the Mach system was commissioned and eventually completed in order to replace the drive system, be better than it. It wasn't a prototype, it was a full production model. It had all the bells and whistles. It had no need for complicated power systems using various shift cars. It only has a handful of signal bikes. So right now I'm using the Mach bike, which is pretty self-explanatory. It gives him his standard form. I can switch it out for Magaru Turn, which gives him the ability to bend his bullets. In this case, it doesn't add a whole lot to my fighting. But there it is anyway. It's nothing fancy. His powers were intended to be the first and last answer to the Roid Mutes, so his powers aren't all that complicated. He has no real variety. But he is technically more powerful than Drive, so despite his lack of training, which is more than made up for with enthusiasm, he is about as strong as Drive, as a result. And he's very enthusiastic. Oof, that was just kind of a big info dump, wasn't it? I wish I could say more. Like, there's not a lot that I could say about the individual series without getting into some pretty deep spoilers. That's kind of the thing about these games, is they have all of the forms available all at once. The ultimate forms are all available. And it's really hard for me to use those without getting really excited and wanting to explain absolutely everything about them without spoiling huge chunks of the series. Like, look at that. I've unlocked Fang Joker. And I could get into huge detail about Fang Joker and where his powers come from and who he is and what he does, but I would just be spoiling an entire movie, actually. An entire 60-minute Kamen Rider movie, as well as a bunch of episodes. And, the most I could say is that it's a powered-up version. And that's really the most that I could say without absolutely spoiling everything about his big reveal. So up next we've got Kamen Rider Decade, who himself is an anniversary edition rider, so I'm not too keen on getting to him just yet. I'd rather either do Agido or Kuga. And actually, you know what, this time I'm not going to put it to a vote. I'm going to do Kuga next. Because Kuga is a direct prequel to Agido, or I guess I should say Agido is a sequel of Kuga, and then we've got Decade, which takes place like 10 years afterwards. It's a full-on anniversary, so the next episodes are going to be Kuga. And I apologize once again for the massive info dump. I must sound like just a Wikipedia article right now. I'm just spewing words. I'm not even really focusing on the game anymore, but that's just it. I've been watching these shows for years, and I've got a lot that I would love to say about them. I just don't want to spoil everything, and it's really hard to find that balance. So, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening, really. And I'll see you in the next episode.